Hey everyone, welcome to this special and timely 4th of July episode of Mountain Climbers. So, when I reached out to this guest in April to see if he could do this interview with me, I had no idea how divided this country would become. So, I can't think of a better time than on this 4th of July weekend for our nation's leaders to come to where the people are. And no leader understands this better than Congressman Brad Wenstrup. As a patient, I'm thankful for his service as a physician. As an American, I'm thankful for his service in the U.S. Army Reserve. As a constituent, I'm thankful for his service as an elected official. And as a Christian, I'm thankful for his faith. So before I met the congressman, I had no idea that there were politicians in DC who not only truly cared about the people who put them into office, but would actually sit down with those people, allowing them to have a voice. And personally, for me, being offered that chance to have my voice heard gave my heart the permission and freedom to hope for more. So let's go over to Zoom and connect with the congressman and hear him share about his faith in the mountains that he's had to climb and how they've shaped his message, what he stands for, and what he believes. May you be encouraged and inspired that we still have leaders in DC who fight for this nation's foundation of the people, by the people, and for the people. Hey, Congressman Winstrup, thank you so much for being on Mountain Climbers.
It's my pleasure to be with you, and it really is good to be with you and to see you once again.
Yeah, well, the honor is all mine, and I just can't think of a better time for a leader from DC to come to where the people are and just share your heart because this nation is so divided right now, and it will be great to see for them to see that you climb mountains just like the rest of us, and so I thank you for that. And first of all, I just want you to give a little bit of your background. Where did you grow up? What part of Ohio do you call, home now? And I know you're a family man, so share a little bit about your family, your wife, your kids.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, went to St. Xavier High School in Cincinnati, then went to the University of Cincinnati, did all my medical training in Chicago. And after I finished my residency, I came back to Cincinnati. I'm married, my wife, Monica, my son, Brad Jr., daughter, Sophia.
Okay.
And we still live here in southwestern Ohio.
All right.
and I'm one of 5 kids, and my wife is one of 6.
Wow.
And so we all have a lot of family and cousins and relatives around.
Well, that's great. It's really cool that you grew up in Ohio and you still live in Ohio, and you have those roots. So that's awesome. And like you said, you graduated from St. Xavier, and then you went on to the University of Cincinnati. And so, after you graduated from high school and then went on to college, did you know that you wanted to become a doctor?
Yeah, I knew at an early age that I wanted to be a doctor. I can go back to 2nd grade. I can remember I watched a TV show with my dad called Medical Center, and I just knew at a young age that I wanted to be a doctor, never really focused on anything else. What I didn't plan on is being a member of Congress someday. And I also didn't necessarily plan on being in the military.
Yeah.
Another show that had an influence on me was a show called Combat, which is about American heroes fighting Nazi Germany.
Okay.
And during World War II.
Yeah.
And I joined the Army Reserve in 1998 because we kept getting attacked. And I thought, if we need to go somewhere, I'll go.
Yeah.
And so that was before 9/11. Then obviously after 9/11, things really picked up for those in uniform.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And how far were you into medical school when you realized you wanted to be a pediatric podiatrist?
Well, I'm not a pediatric podiatrist. I'm a general podiatrist, podiatric surgeon. Okay. But so when I was an undergrad, I worked in an I worked in an emergency room.
Okay.
Again, still trying to go on that track.
Yeah.
I worked in Michigan every summer in college, and there
Ooh.
was a pediatrist who was a guest at this resort every summer. And he said, if you ever want to come see what I do, you're more than welcome. So I did.
Mm-hmm.
And what I appreciated about his practice was he was in surgery a few days a week and doing some trauma cases, but also had his day-to-day sports medicine, et cetera. So it was a wide variety of things you could do as a foot and ankle specialist.
Yeah.
And most of the patients were leaving his office saying, thanks so much, I feel so much better, sometimes almost instantly, sometimes after recovering from surgery.
Yeah.
And then I had read an article that said that there would be an excess of all physicians but podiatrists. So that drew my interest even further. Now, I don't think that panned out. I think today we have a shortage of all physicians, but that's another story.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to know is, how could an Ohioan work in Michigan?
Oh, well, we started going there when I was a kid, and I didn't go to Ohio State.
Very well. Okay.
I wasn't going to Ohio State, and I wasn't going to Michigan either. I went to the University of Cincinnati, so we were all good. But
You're neutral.
matter of fact, we just were enjoying the summers in Michigan. So, good question, though.
Okay, well, you're allowed then. That's okay.
Well, the rivalries were alive and well in northern Michigan. Don't worry.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And so I'm curious. You mentioned the surgical component of podiatry. Was that a big reason why that fascinated you so much?
No, without a doubt. That was one of the most interesting parts of it, I think. And surgical training, and Chicago is a great place to train too. And we were, as residents in the hospital, we were the only residents. We scrubbed on everything surgical, and certainly focused on foot and ankle for our specialty.
Yeah, that would be an incredible opportunity. So that would be really enticing. What is the most rewarding aspect of being a doctor?
The satisfaction. I mean, I just think some days were so long. I'd see 50 some patients in the office all day. You finish the day and you go, we just helped a lot of people. We just really helped a lot of people. That is one of the most rewarding things. And I speak sometimes at graduations, or what we call white coat ceremonies, and I always remind people. And I think this gets tougher and tougher in medicine today. But I tell them, never lose sight of the fact that you're taking care of a patient, a fellow human being. It's not just a part. It's not just an organ. It's not just a bone. It's that person. And at the end of the day, there's nothing that makes you feel better than when you've reduced someone's anxiety, the whole path. And as we get through coronavirus, I hope everyone returns to that, because that's one of the most important things in that relationship.
Yeah. And, as a patient, I can say that I appreciate it so much when doctors treat me like a person and not a petri dish. So I love that you said that. And, that rewarding aspect, was that your reasons behind, and you already touched on this, going into the military and using your skill as a doctor?
Yeah, so I joined the Army Reserve in, I said, 1998, because we kept getting attacked. And I thought, well, the Army moves on its feet, and that's my specialty. And that's why I joined, and had the opportunity in 2005, 2006. Those who have been to war are the ones that appreciate peace the most. Just let me clarify that. We prefer peace. We prefer to be a deterrent. But if we're going, you want to be there for the troops. And I had the opportunity to serve as chief of surgery in Iraq for the 344th Combat Support Hospital for 1 year, 2005, 2006, with a great team of Americans that took care of people. We took care of our troops, and we also took care of the enemy. That was our main mission, because we were stationed at a detention facility. So you talk about a biblical mission of showing love to your enemy. That was challenging. Some embraced it, and there were those that would flat out say, thanks for helping me, but if I have a chance to kill you, I will. So that was an extremely interesting environment to be in at all times. But it was one of the bloodiest times of the war, we were able to do a lot and help a lot of people. And we were in charge not only of trauma and surgical care, but also in charge of overall health of those that were detained. And I think we put America in a very good light at a very difficult time.
Yeah. That's great, and thank you for your service. I appreciate it so much, and that would be tough. And I love how you shed light on the fact that it's a biblical mission, because you're literally helping your enemies, and so that is one of the most selfless things that you can do. And you mentioned if you go, you're there to help the troops. And one of my favorite things that I see of men and women in the military is that united bond that they have with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It really is a sisterhood and brotherhood.
Absolutely.
Has that been your experience?
That was totally my experience. As Americans, we already come from all corners of the earth to make up one nation.
Yeah.
And when you put on that uniform, you are a team. And I'll give you, especially in light of what is going on in our country today. Let me just share something. When I came back, I started giving talks about my tour, and that expanded into talking on service and leadership, etc.
Yeah.
But I was given a talk about my tour, and one of my patients, African-American woman, was at one of my talks. And so when she came into the office later, she said, "I saw your pictures." And she said, "Race didn't matter, did it?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, no." I said, "I never even thought about it."
Yeah.
So with that, I put some thought to what my team consisted of.
Yeah.
So I had about 15 people that I had oversight of, because I was in charge of the operating room, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And I realized of those of us that were there for the whole year, which was most of us, we had some other surgeons come in and out, I was the only Caucasian. And it never occurred to me.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me. We were all one team. And if you count my supply guy, mm-hmm. Sergeant Trottingworth, we were red, white, brown, black, yellow, red, and we were all just Americans. Yeah. And that's all that mattered. And I wish more people would get to experience that, where it's absolutely not even considered. It never went through my mind until I got home and someone brought it up. And she wasn't bringing it up in a negative way. She was bringing it up in a positive way. Yeah. And I just wish more people could live that experience.
Mm-hmm. You're right. That's exactly how it should be, whether, you're a soldier or just an everyday American. It should not matter. And, that's cool that you got that experience. And, you're a doctor, you're a soldier, and you're American. So I can't imagine, with those three things, how hard it was on the day of the terrorist attack on 9/11. So watching that, what were you feeling that day?
I was in my office seeing patients, sharing a work area with one of the other doctors as our treatment rooms kind of merged there. And one of my associates' assistant came back and said, "A plane just flew into the World Trade Center." I said, "What?" I'm thinking like a small plane, whatever. No, it's like, that's too bizarre. And then within minutes, she said, "Another one did." I said, "We're under attack. Our country is under attack." Mm-hmm. And, you just drive on and you keep seeing patients, but it's getting odder, as more people know this happened, and you're seeing patients all day, people not sure what to do. Mm-hmm. When all planes were down, we just kept seeing patients, but I figured it was a matter of time before people started getting a call to do something. Yeah.
I was so young that I did not understand the enormity of what was happening at the time. And as I've grown up, it's hit close more to home. I understand it now. And it was such a horrific day. And so were you deployed for the Iraqi war?
Yes. So I was deployed 2005, 2006. And so it took a while before it was my turn. Yeah. And so we had been in Iraq for a couple of years. Of course, the first movement was towards Afghanistan, and then into Iraq. And people can debate that war, and that's what we're able to do in America. But I can tell you, we liberated 26 million people or so that were part of a evil dictatorship,
Mm-hmm.
where there was genocide. If you
Mm-hmm.
have a chance to ever meet the Kurds up in the Kurdish region who love Americans,
Yeah.
they were killed. But to that point, I operated on Chemical Ali. That was the man who was in charge of the genocide of Kurds.
Wow.
Tens of thousands of Kurds killed by this man.
Oh
I
my.
operated him, got him better. Then he went through their justice system. But that was our role,
Yeah.
and that was our time. So when we took care of people, we took care of children, we took care of people in the community. It was a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Out of everything bad, there's a chance to do something good.
Yeah.
And that's what we were trying to do in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that we did. And those that were attention recognized what America is capable of doing on the humanitarian front.
Yeah. And that's how you'd have to look at it. You're helping people, you're liberating them, and you can't really, listen to the people who are debating and saying we should have never gone. You have to really focus in on what's important, because that's what's going to get you through. And so, how many tours have you served, and where were you during those tours?
So I had one long tour. I was gone for 15 months from my practice. I got a call on a Monday afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
And on Thursday I was at processing in Alabama, and the next week I was at Fort McCoy getting ready to go. So I got a very short lease because I was cross-leveled to a unit that was already getting ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of reserve physicians just 9 days. And so I was there all year as chief of surgery. The other surgeons that came for 90 days at a time. That was the length of their tour. So tours vary in length depending upon what you do, whether you're active or reserve, or whether you're Army or Air Force or Marine. So they were varied.
Okay, well that's interesting. And being a combat surgeon and serving as a soldier, and you've touched on this a little bit already, but I can't imagine the horrific things that you've had to see. And so, how has your faith in God and the strength that He's given you sustain you through these traumatic things that you've had to witness in the line of duty?
Well, I always feel that God puts you where He wants you and needs you as much as possible. And, sometimes, Garth Brooks say, you thank God for unanswered prayers, because God knows better. But, war is horrific. There's no doubt about it. And that's why I said those that have been to war are the greatest lovers of peace. Our situation, we often had to defend ourselves. Where we were attacked 3-4 times a week. Again, out of everything bad, there's a chance to do something good. And my faith was there. I got up and prayed every morning. I'm a Catholic. I said the rosary every morning. I read some of the readings, and it gets you through. And it really does. And I can remember, sometimes you don't know that you've helped somebody until they tell you later. But I was reminded at the end of the tour by one of our staff sergeants. She said, I asked you in the first month or two here, I said, how is it that you can come in here and smile every day? And I said, I don't smile every minute of every day. And sometimes I'm in tears. I said, but if I don't, they won. Then the bad guys beat me. And I don't want to let them beat me. And she at the end of the tour, she came and reminded me of that and said, you really helped me with that. But that's a lot of faith-based type of an attitude to carry into everything. And God has a plan, and it gives you a lot of confidence and takes away a lot of worry.
Oh, it does. I don't know how people do it without God's strength. And I'm so glad you had that strength to depend on in some really horrific, awful times. And so now I want to shift from your career as a doctor and a soldier to your other career as a congressman. And the first words of the preamble is "we the people." And President Lincoln's famous last words of the Gettysburg Address, and it's even on the Lincoln Memorial in D.C., took this concept a step further. And these last words said this, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from earth. So, it's evident to me that the foundation of this country is that it's supposed to be governed by the voice of the people. So did this belief in this foundation, was it your driving force behind your reasoning for pursuing a seat in the U.S. Congress?
Well, that and service itself.
Yeah.
I mean, we are lucky to live in a country where we get to elect our leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've made the case presented to people today during these divided political times. I said, I joined the reserves because our country was under attack. I joined in 1998 when Bill Clinton was president. I didn't vote for Bill Clinton, but he was my commander in chief.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to live in a country where we get to elect our leaders, and I accept the results of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I work within those parameters. Bill Clinton was my commander in chief. Barack Obama has been my commander in chief. And you have to have respect for that system for us to be successful.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and I also looked at Washington and I thought, well, when I started in practice, it was just me with 2 employees. And I joined a large orthopedic group with 300 some employees. And I was operations chair there. I said, we got people in Washington making business decisions that never ran a business.
Mm-hmm.
We got people making healthcare decisions that never saw a patient. We got people making military decisions that never served. I think I bring something to the table, just as our farmers that run and serve in Congress do. Just as anyone who has a background, and I always tell young people, they'll say, I get asked sometimes, hey, I'd like to be in Congress someday. What should I do? And I look them in the eye and say, something else first. Do something first, because then you bring something to the table, a real life experience, so you know what other Americans are going through. If your whole life is in politics, you've really you're not bringing that much to the table, except for maybe how the legislature works, but not necessarily a real world experience that you can lend your voice to the conversation. But when it comes to agriculture, I talk to the farmers in Congress. That these are things that I think are important. You see more doctors running for Congress. So there's a lot of good reasons, it seemed to me, and I didn't want to look back and wish I had done it and didn't do it. And so, I'm proud to serve, proud to represent my district. I think, I'm able to bring some things to the table. If you get in Congress and you think you know everything about everything, you're going to fail. This is a team sport and should be. I like to think that Congress should be a think tank where we work to create the best ideas. But some things, a concern, obviously greatly divided today on a lot of fronts. I think some people we see are challenging what Lincoln said, that they want something, that they think they want something else. Well, there are places in the world that have what you're looking for. People are trying to leave there and come here. Pay attention to that. And so I do have concerns. I mean, I have concerns about things that took place in the FBI and the DOJ, serving on Intelligence Committee, that you have people with positions of authority that have abused that they think they get to decide who the president of the United States is instead of the people. That should be of grave concern to everyone, Republican or Democrat. And if it was against a Democrat duly elected president, I'd be just as upset about it as I am. So these are the things we have to instill in our minds again, that we've been given a great system. We are always challenged to mend our flaws, as America the Beautiful says. God, mend our every flaw. That's our challenge. And we need to continue to do that to achieve the goals that Lincoln set out. The problems we have today are not with the flag. The flag represents all the virtues that solve all these problems that people are having. It's up to us as individuals to take the responsibility to live up what that flag has been made to represent. Does that sum it up for you?
Oh my goodness, there's so many golden nuggets in what you just said. I'm like, amen, preach. I agree with you. It's great. And it's a great, bridge to my next question, because I have seen firsthand that you take what you just said seriously and you put into action. Because before I met you, I did not know there were politicians in DC who truly cared about the constituents who put them into office. So, I can't tell you how much I thank you for that, because, you gave me hope that change is possible and that I could hope for more. So, right now, I just want you to speak to your constituents and the American people and tell them how important it is to you that their voice be heard.
How important it is to me, what? I'm sorry.
For their voice to be heard.
Oh, absolutely. Advocacy is huge. And I tell that to every group that comes and visits in DC. I said, you've got to, if the representative doesn't always know what's on your mind unless you let them know.
Yeah.
That's an important thing. And so whether it's advocacy for some type of cancer, or no matter what the situation is, whether it's for veterans, whether it's against suicide, all these types of things, racism, whatever the case may be, you have to let your representative know. Let your representative know what is going on in your life and how the government is affecting it, or how we can try and make it better. I consider it service. And, just as I consider putting on the uniform, and putting on the uniform is a form of service. I considered my job as a doctor a great opportunity to help others. One of the greatest things that we can do in our office, because we do have a big country and we do have a big federal government, and everyone has to deal with it in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes there's glitches, and if we can help ease that passage through some of the federal bureaucracy, of which I'd like to see less of, then that's what we do.
Yeah.
And it's people need to know that they're being heard, and that's the idea of being a representative. It can be tough sometimes because policies we're going to differ on.
Yeah.
I don't hate anyone who has a different policy against me. I don't like people that don't want to be civil about it. That's the problem that we have.
Yeah.
And you want to listen, you want to be heard. You may sometimes disagree with the person who wants to tell you what's bothering them.
Yeah.
You may have different advice for them, and may you have conciliatory advice for them, and you may just be learning from them more than anything else.
Yeah.
So it's a real give and take in that job that people need to recognize on both sides of the conversation. But I do make the joke sometimes. People say, what do you miss most about your medical practice? I say my 99% approval rating. Because once you put an R or a D after your name, somebody decides they just don't like you and they've never met you.
Yep.
So it is important that you talk to your constituents, because oftentimes, even if you disagree, if you can sit and talk civilly, you at least have a different impression of the person, maybe disagree still with the policy.
Yeah. And you become a person to them, like a real person, right. Not just a politician in DC who's more concerned about their agenda than, the voice of the American people. And, you mentioned that it can be hard because some people are not civil when they do not agree with you. And I can't imagine how bad that is in Congress. I'm sure there's a lot of uncivilness in Congress. And you have to have tough skin. You have to know who you are and what you stand for. And, I'd say that it's even probably one of the toughest mountains you've had to climb. So let's go back to your strength in God. How has God sustained you in the midst of such hostility and division?
Yeah. One, I keep praying that we can get through it.
Yeah.
and come together. And so that is one of the benefits of having faith, and feeling that the prayer can be helpful. Prayer has been helpful to me in so many ways through my lifetime, even more so as I got older.
Yeah.
I was talking to a group of pastors, and this was out in the rural part of my district. district, and they're like what you just implied. How can you stand it, Brad? You know, how can you stand what's going on and dealing with all that?
Yeah.
And I said, well, one of the things that occurred to me a couple of years ago, at least to be able to realize that it's occurred to me and put it into words, is, you know, my faith, Christianity, Catholic, it existed long before the United States of America.
Yeah.
And I suspect it's going to exist long after the United States of America. Not that I want the United States of America to come to an end, because our country was founded on Judeo-Christian values that are consistent with my faith today. And I will continue to try and take those values. Like our laws are based on our values, and I will continue to try and take those values and those virtues and try to have our country formed in that type of an image, understanding that we can all be different.
Yeah.
But we need basic values. And but at the end of the day, I'm going to be judged by God.
Yeah.
And so if I can wrap my family around that first, and then the United States of America in that order, we're going to be fine. God, family, country. God, family, country. That's what I grew up on. And I just think that is what helps me get through at the end of the day. Somebody wants to yell at me, and it happens on both sides of the aisle, don't get me wrong.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And so, you know, someone's yelling and screaming at me, you know, I just think I'm going to be judged at the end of the day by my maker. And that's what I have to try and live up to.
Yeah.
And there's a pretty good set of standards that were laid down.
Yeah. And, you know, like you said, being a congressman does have difficult and trying times. But are there moments that you can share where you just smile and say, this is why I do what I do?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you know, most people are very good. And I can tell you, I've gotten letters from people that are from the other side of the aisle that when our office has been able to help them in some situation, with IRS or whatever, they really write nice letters.
Awesome.
You know, from either side of the aisle, and just saying, thank you so much. Thanks to you. Thanks to your staff. You really helped me through this. You know, I was so nervous about this, and now it's a settled issue. Yeah. Those types of things. You know, it's challenging. We don't win them all, but we certainly are out there, and those are the types of things that make you feel good. And also, when you come together with legislation that's going to make things better for the next generation, that's a good feeling. Yeah. You know, I get very much engaged on where our military is going, where military medicine is going, and all of that. Those are things, most of the things that you hopefully are working on are selfless, right? They're not for you, they're for others. So that does get to come up a lot. And, you know, a lot of times it's bipartisan. That doesn't make any news, by the way. When you get some of these things done that are bipartisan, it doesn't make much news. I look at the National Defense Authorization Act. When I was on Armed Services, we passed that 60-1 with 500 amendments that we debated. 1 year we passed it unanimously, and there's nothing in the paper about it.
Yeah.
This is our defense. And that's how it's passed out of committee. So, but you just got something done that's going to serve the American people well.
And that has to make you, you know, feel good. And I think it's interesting that you just pointed out that the good stuff media doesn't usually cover. And that's really sad to think about. But, you know, you bringing that to light is a huge encouragement. And hopefully, you know, will encourage people who watch this interview. And again, before I met you, I just thought politicians were intimidating and rigid. But you opened my eyes, you know, to politicians. And I realized you're just like, you know, everyone else. And, you know, you want to let loose and have fun just as much as the next person. And I think a good example of this is the annual congressional baseball game that Democrats and Republicans play in. And, you know, explain the premise of this game. 'Cause not everyone might know what it's about. Is it just a time for like Republicans and Democrats to come together, enjoy each other and just get a reprieve from politics.
Well, there's still the rivalry. Don't
Oh,
get
I'm
don't
sure.
yeah. But it is a coming together.
Yeah.
Look, when you get in Congress, by and large, most people there are just human beings. Well, we're all human beings, but we're just human beings that have our flaws, have our differences,
Yeah.
this and that. So the baseball game is one that we do for charity for Boys and Girls Club of DC, and raises thousands and thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun. And we practice for months, which is a chance within our conference to go to practice and get to know some of your fellow members that maybe you're not on committees with, and so you don't spend time with them. So it's a chance for coming together in a more fun setting.
Yeah.
That I think is positive. But the game is just a wonderful thing to see happen, and see how many people come out to watch it. It's not always pretty, I got to tell you that. But we play at National Stadium. You're in a major league ballpark with so many sponsors that are proud to be there. At the end of the day, we come together, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, that's great. How many congressional baseball games have you played in?
7 so far.
7. Okay, that's awesome. Well, most of the American people know about the horrific circumstances surrounding the congressional baseball game in 2017. So walk me through that horrific day. You were practicing with your fellow Republican senators and Republicans like you do every year when you hear gunshots. Did you know immediately that you and your colleagues were being attacked?
Well, my first thought was, is that really what I think it is?
Mm-hmm.
And I was hoping it was something else, like a truck backfiring or something like that. But it was within seconds when there was a second shot, and I was pretty familiar with that sound, having been in war. It was very odd. I never got nervous or anxious during it. It was afterwards where I had to take a deep breath and realize how God's presence was there and how many things had to go right. I had just batted, and I was on my way to the outfield.
Yeah.
While other batters, came to the plate. And I thought, no, I think I'll go down to the batting cage.
Yeah.
Well, the batting cage is down the first base line, and it's outside the fence of the field.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Which are very high fences.
Yeah.
The shooter started on the third base side. Okay, he had been out there for a couple months, I guess, living outside on the street beyond there.
Oh my.
Met the groundskeeper later, and he said, I don't know why, but I locked the third base gate the night before. So that prevented the shooter from coming in. So his first shot was aimed at Trent Kelly at third base, who's a brigadier general in the National Guard. He immediately yelled, got a gun, shooter. Everybody started running. Yeah. It missed Trent Kelly because it hit a link in the fence, and you can go back and see that today. And that was by the grace of God. Yeah. Unfortunately, Steve Scalise was at second base, and he was hit with the second round and went down and crawling towards the outfield with a trail of blood behind him. Yeah. Steve took a bullet for all of us. Yeah. Because if he wasn't there, he doesn't get shot. If he wasn't there, there's no police protection there because he's the only one who has a detail. Yeah. And so Capitol Police were there, responded almost immediately, but they were over on the first base side. Yeah. So this guy's further away, and he's shooting at everybody that are basically penned into that field. Yeah. This field, as a public field, had actual dugouts, not just a bench over there, but dugouts that was served as a bunker as everyone was diving into it. Some people got hurt diving into it, and you can see the bullet holes above the dugout. There were 136 rounds fired. 5 people were hit, including both police. And the shooter was eventually taken out when Alexandria police came, and he was covered by Capitol Police and Alexandria police. But everyone was going for cover. Well, so where I was, I just, just got down on the ground. Now, when he circled around and started shooting down the lane where I was and being engaged by Capitol Police, we had people hiding behind trees, behind cars. The cars were all shot out. I had to move once. There was a bathroom right next to me, and I got behind that. but I could still keep an eye on Steve and keep an eye on the shooter.
Yeah.
And once they closed in on him, I was able to move and get out on the field and help Steve. By the grace of God, he was still conscious at that time.
Yeah.
But we were able to apply a tourniquet and other sports of aid that when he got to the hospital and was taken care of there at that higher level of care, doctors said that the tourniquet made a difference because he was losing a lot of blood.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. And, I want to go back to something that, you highlighted. Nothing is coincidence at all. And, thank God for the police. But here you are with your training as a combat surgeon and a doctor, and you're at the right place at the right time. And so, there had to be a higher power watching over you. So when you went to go help Representative Scalise in the midst of an active shooter, I mean, what was going through your mind? Did you think about your family? Did you wonder if you'd ever see your kids and wife again?
I was really focusing on what I was trained to do in the military. Be in a safe position. Don't become another casualty. Do everything you can to try and get to that casualty. And he was the only one left laying on the field, so that was my focus. And I never felt anxious. And with the Capitol Police there, and ultimately Alexandria Police, I felt pretty covered, which is what you want in the combat situation, right? So it was just a matter of making the right move at the right time. And it wasn't until I got to my office, I still had my batting gloves on with blood all over them, and my wife walked in and she burst into tears.
Oh, man.
That brought it home for me. And really, a couple days later, when I started adding up all the things that happened, the shooter started over by the bullpen. It was our last practice, so pitchers and catchers were not in the bullpen. Because they were resting their arms, right? So that was another divine intervention. That's the day he chose. I mean, but why I went down to the batting cage, I don't know, because I didn't even like that batting cage. So it was a couple days. It was a little wild. The machine was a little wild. And it was a couple days later, I'm like, wow, all these things. God, you really played a hand. In this entire day for us.
It just shows you how much he orchestrates all the details, and he has his hand on all of his children's lives because, like you said, everything had to go right for you all to survive, that day. And I just want to clarify, you mentioned the tourniquet you put on Representative Scalise. If you did not do that, if you didn't do that day, would have Representative Scalise survived?
Well, his surgeons at the hospital said he would not have. So that wasn't for me to say. They got the full assessment. I mean, he got an extraordinary amount of blood because as they were operating on him, he was still losing blood. What happened is when I got out to him, I did what I was trained to do. I saw where he was shot, and it was on his side. I pulled down his pant leg. I looked for an exit wound. There wasn't one. And so I knew that went up, and I had to put a tourniquet on as high as I possibly could to stop at least that level of bleeding. But I knew there was more internally, hopefully smaller, and maybe some of it clotting. So it was keep him safe. I was asking him questions, count to 5. I knew he had nerve damage in his leg because he couldn't move his left foot really. And I wanted fluids. And I knew he needed an IV as soon as possible to replace some of the fluid he was losing internally. I got him drinking. But by the time he got on the helicopter, he went out. He doesn't remember anything after that. And even the helicopter pilot, he was one that was authorized to fly anywhere in D.C.
Oh, good.
So, because he could go to the hospital, and he had flown in combat, and he said that I flew that bird as though I stole it. So a lot of things had to happen just right, because when he got to the hospital, his blood pressure was 0, and they were able to immediately work on keeping him alive.
That, oh, that's amazing. It's a testament that miracles still exist today, definitely. And what you did, according
Yeah.
to the Bible, is the greatest act of love that anyone can bestow on someone, laying down your life for a friend. And that act of heroism earned you the Soldier's Medal for heroism to add to your Bronze Star and Combat Badge. So, what did that honor mean to you?
Uh, I think what it meant to me, and one of the first things I said was, my Army training kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
It meant that I was blessed to
Mm-hmm.
have had a training
Yeah.
that actually, a training you hope you never use, but I had the experience in life of using it.
Yeah.
That God gave me that background,
Mm-hmm.
that talent, and that know-how
Yeah.
to go out and hopefully save someone's life.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it'll always represent. When I see that soldier's medal, I see Steve Scalise standing up, walking again.
Mm-hmm. What a great feeling that has to be, to see him alive. And I don't know how much you see him, but every time you see him, I mean, you have to be reminded, like, wow, look at all these.
We've become very close,
that
and we
that
now know that we now know that we're both O positive blood.
well, that's good to know. Like, if he now I'm sure he feels like, if you ever need blood, he will give blood to you. He will
There
work
you
in your
go.
favor. So that's great.
Yeah.
But I've said this so many times. I can't tell you how much I appreciate having someone like you in DC who fights for this country's principles and the foundation that this country was founded upon. You truly are a man of integrity and honor. And so what I want to know is, with integrity and honor being the driving force behind the remainder of your career as a representative, what do you hope will be the legacy that you leave behind for the generation after you?
Well, I think the biggest legacy comes from a line that a fellow podiatrist, a guy by the name of Dr. Larry Harkless, gave me, something his father said to him.
Mm.
He said, if you're someone at home, you don't have to be somebody somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so, but what you do elsewhere is what makes you somebody at home as well. And so, I think my biggest legacy is, to my wife and kids.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as this country, and my God knows that I tried,
Yeah.
that I tried to do the best I can. I'm full of flaws. We're all sinners. But I'm trying. I'm trying to do right by myself, my family, my country, and my fellow citizens, my fellow man,
Yeah.
my man friend, right?
Yeah.
So that's all there is, because
Yeah. Well, that I mean that
it's all fleeting.
yeah. Well, that means so much, and it encourages people. And I can tell you that your efforts do not go unnoticed. You don't just say things, you put action behind what you say, and I appreciate that so much. And this last question, I believe it's so important for your constituents to hear, because we've talked about how divided this country is, and I think they need to hear this message from you. But I think one of the reasons that this country is so divided is because of how partisan this Congress is, and the division that American people see coming from it every single day. And I know a lot of it is also what the media portrays, and that's very hard. But we the people, we need the assurance that our voice is being heard, and that there can be a bridge between both sides, and that there can be unity. So I want to know, how will you fight for this unity and for the land of the free to go back to its roots of the people, by the people.
Well, I'll tell you, I can share with you a piece that I put together for Flag Day
Mm-hmm.
that I think summarizes all
Yeah.
of that. And again, going back to some of the things you've quoted and the virtues that have been behind our country. We haven't been perfect as a nation, but we have laid down principles that we can live by, and I want to keep reflecting on that.
Yes.
And so I think in kind of the nutshell, it's like when people think it's appropriate to burn the flag. Well, that's your right, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, if you want to do that, but you're not understanding what that flag represents.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is we don't all live up to the virtues of the flag each and every day, and if we all strive to do that, equal justice, fairness at every point, that we are government of the people, by the people, for the people,
Yeah.
then we can be unified. And if we recognize that that was the intent of our founders, and we continue to work towards fixing things that need fixing along with those principles, we're gonna be better off.
Yeah.
And so we all have our own individual responsibility to live up to those.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's no matter you're Republican or Democrat, we live up to those principles and respect the notion of being a government of the people, not a government run by agencies of unelected people, but a government of the people, and respect the virtues that come with that. We can do much better.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. And, if everyone would heed that, then our nation, we would see change. What you just said is what's going to foster change. And, I can't thank you enough for coming on Mountain Climbers. I think even now is the most opportune time and the most, impactful time that a leader can come to where the American people are. And, I want to thank you for your service as a physician, a soldier, and an elected official. And I really appreciate your faith. It means a lot to me. And I think the greatest thing I love about you is that in the midst of darkness and corruption in DC, you're a light every single day, showing everyone this truth. When your strength comes from the right source, there's not a mountain